Thank you everyone for coming, for those of you that are here in person, as well as those of you who have joined us via the live stream. I know we're all expecting an informative and interesting session. But before we get started and before I introduce our candidates, I have a few thank yous I would like to talk about. First of all, I would like to thank the Doylestown Democrats. I'd like to thank Noni West, the mayor of Doylestown, and John Davis, the borough manager, and John Frederick from the Borough Council for enabling us to use this wonderful space for this event. We really appreciate it. Yes. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Steve Sullivan, who is one of the Assembly Vice Chairs, who has worked tirelessly to get this all set up and to make sure that we have the arrangements for the live streaming and recording. We could not have this event without him. Now I would like to introduce our candidates. Tim Brennan, Neil Doherty, Connor O'Hanlon, and Liz Sheen. Thank you all for agreeing and participating in this event. In terms of our format, each candidate is going to have 5 minutes to give opening remarks. Then we are going to move into a question and answer period. The questions were selected by Steve and Phil, our other Assembly Vice Chair, and myself, from the questions that many of you submitted. The candidates have not seen the questions. Once the Q&A is done, each candidate will have 3 minutes to make closing comments. That's it, pretty straightforward. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Phil Cooper, who is going to be our moderator for this evening. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Susan. We will begin with opening remarks, coming in alphabetical order. So beginning with Tim Brennan.
Thank you all. Welcome to our new Borough Council building here in Doylestown. It's also our new regional police station. This is a great example of municipal cooperation between the boroughs of Chalfont, New Britain, and Doylestown. We're saving taxpayer funds, and this is just really good government. Next door, on one of our most important corridors, we turned a brownfield into a gigantic green space. Corridors are so important to a town, and we did that with the help of RAC grants. I know how important those state grants are for communities, and I'm certainly going to remember that in Harrisburg and the project that we did here. It's a great example of what happens when progressives lead. I can't start without at least mentioning Ukraine. We're here participating in our democracy today while Ukrainians are fighting and dying for theirs. We see so many inspiring stories on the news these days, and I think it has to help us all remember that little spark of what it means to truly be free. And we're seeing it in those people, and we have to keep them in our hearts and minds. Who am I and why am I best qualified to run in the 29th? I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a council person, I'm an attorney. I grew up waiting tables at my parents' mom and pop restaurant. I'm first generation college graduate. I never expected in a million years to be an attorney or a council person. But I did the things that made me feel whole, and I've always gravitated to those things. And as a result, I have a 30-year record of progressive advocacy. I started at 11 years old, working the polls for Dukakis because I was angry about the Willie Horton Act because it was a dog whistle to racism. I ran the Pennsylvania Young Democrats, elected by my peers statewide. I worked on redistricting reform, and I actually served in at least 3 different legislative offices doing constituent services, both state offices and federal offices. I've been a community college professor. I taught politics. I taught animal law, which is really a unique qualification to have in the legislature. As an attorney, I represent injured workers, and I was privileged to defend an election board fighting against Donald Trump over and over again after he sued us several times, trying to throw out ballots and trying to call into question our democracy. As a council person, I had a progressive voting record. I helped start our first Pride event. I think we all have to think about what exactly a state legislator does. And I think we always blow past the core of what that is. It's constituent service. It's the people that come into your office and have a LIHEAP application or a rent rebate. We have important things going on in Harrisburg, but those people, when they're there in our office, they have to be the most important thing. We have to be able to run an office. So many legislators get in trouble for not being able to do good constituent service, and I've done it before, and I'll certainly excel at that. As a legislator, we have to make decisions, both as a trustee and a delegate. As a trustee, we're going to have our constituents' thoughts, concerns, interests in mind as we're making decisions. And as a delegate, we're going to have your trust. We're going to have to be able to make decisions, understanding the law and applying it, and knowing what our decisions will do for people's lives, for 12.5 million Pennsylvanians. Unfortunately, we don't always have the legislators we deserve in Harrisburg. We have so many Republicans that are dangerously inept, that aren't committed to democratic principles and just aren't able to handle the difficult questions in front of us today. And there are so many of them. We live in an era where we have such advances in science, technology, communications, but we still have so much suffering. We have so much misinformation. We have inequality. We have so many threats to our future and our children's future. You need a representative who's prepared on day one to fight back against these forces in these really difficult times. It may sound cliche, but I'm running to serve. It's what I've done my whole life. I really don't know how to live any other way. Progressive advocacy is in my DNA, whether it's being an 11-year-old standing up against racism or being a 44-year-old standing up against a dangerous president. You've all looked at the questionnaires that we put in. We're all good people. These are all people that care about building a just society. I hope that you take a look at my qualifications. I think I've built a record that you can trust and that you can believe will go to Harrisburg and be able to accomplish something and get it done right away and continue to do it. Over the last 3 decades, I've built that record. So I'll be ready on day one. I hope you give me the chance to serve, and that's really what I want to do.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on, number 2 is Neil Doherty.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for hosting and chairing this event. Good evening to the committee people here and those at home. We have a once-in-a-decade opportunity to flip this district from red to blue. Tonight, I'm going to make the case as to why I'm the person to do that, both based on my ability to win this election and to do the job in Harrisburg. I'm experienced, I'm principled, I'm rooted in this district, and I'm eager to serve you in Harrisburg. Tonight, I'm asking for your support. Let me tell you why I'm running for this office. To do that, I need to take you back to 2013 when I was first on the New Hope-Solebury School Board. We had some issues we needed addressed and resolved, and I noticed pretty early on we weren't hearing from our state representative. He never attended a meeting. He didn't send anyone. His office was slow to get back to us. In short, we did not have the voice that we needed in Harrisburg. In 2014, I was disappointed to see that he ran for re-election without an opponent. That was the old 178th. In 2016, I stepped up and I raised my hand. I ran against him. During that time, I helped reconnect some of the committees that formed the 178th. If you look back at the last 10 years, I have dedicated my professional life to public service and to building the Democratic Party here in Bucks County. I'm rooted here. I was born and raised here. My wife and I met here, Dr. Lorraine Doherty. We're raising our children here. I want to share with you a few accomplishments of which I'm especially proud. When I was first named New Hope-Solebury School Board President, I saw to it that we passed a policy that protected gay and transgender students and staff. It was the first of its kind in Bucks County and only the second in the state. In 2017, I was elected Bucks County Controller, the first Democrat to hold that office in nearly 40 years. I was responsible for oversight of a budget of $500 million. And during the pandemic, I was responsible for vetting and issuing nearly 2,500 small business grants, totaling $50 million. Those grants were a lifeline to small businesses to help them get through the pandemic. It helped them retain employees and keep their doors open. Now, I'm the Director of Sustainability for the county. On the issues, I think you're going to see that we have a lot in agreement. On education, Pennsylvania needs a fair funding formula so that every student has access to a quality education in a safe environment. On reproductive rights, I believe the right to choose is non-negotiable. Pennsylvania laws are already restrictive. On elections, we need to protect the essential right to vote, and we need to know that it'll be counted. We need same-day registration. We need early voting. We need vote by mail. There are people on the other side of the aisle who are working. They're smart and they're determined, and they are working to dismantle our democracy, and they are working to curtail our right to vote. There's another issue that is of special importance to me, and I think it ought to be important to you, and that is the opioid epidemic. We are losing young people. We need to increase access to treatment. We need to increase access to mental health support, and we need to expand the use of medication-assisted treatment by physicians to those in recovery. On climate change, Pennsylvania needs to adopt and roll out utility-scale solar. The good news there is the Biden administration's infrastructure plan has allocated funding for a national network of electric vehicle charging stations. The states that present a coherent, organized plan will assure that they get their fair share of that funding, and they can build up that network locally. Ultimately, I think a good state rep needs to have three qualities. They need to be available, they need to be a good listener, and they need to follow through. I promise you all three. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. If I ask you to pass the mic down, thank you. Moving on. The next candidate is Connor O'Hanlon.
Thank you, everyone. I first want to thank Susan, Phil, and Steve for organizing this in conjunction with the Doylestown Borough Hall for hosting this event. Briefly, I'm going to start off with a little bit about my background tonight. And we'll start off with the fact that I grew up here in Doylestown. I went through the public school district from Groveland Elementary School all the way to Central Bucks West High School. Once I graduated from West, I went on to Penn State where I got my bachelor's degree in accounting and a certificate of real estate. Once I graduated from Penn State, I came back to Doylestown because this was the community that raised me, and I wanted to give back. I worked here as a realtor while studying for my CPA license, and that's what I do. Currently, I work as a CPA. I audit publicly traded companies that file and are regulated by the SEC. But tonight, I didn't want to just talk about my background. I actually wanted to address what you in the audience might have as a question or a concern about me or my campaign. And I'm going to start off with the elephant in the room, and I don't mean the Republican that might be in here. I mean the fact that I'm young. Throughout our history, throughout American history, young leaders have always led the way. I'm going to highlight three really quickly for us. My favorite founding father, Alexander Hamilton, was 21 years old on July 4th, 1776. President Joe Biden, when he was elected to the United States Senate, was 29 years old, not even old enough to sit in the seat yet. And the last Democrat to flip Bucks County blue in Congress, Patrick Murphy, was 30 years old when he did it. I'm not comparing myself to these leaders, but I'm just saying that if we look towards young people for progressive change, they are always there. They've always been there to lead the way. I also would like to say that age is just a number. It's not how long we're on this earth that matters, but it's what we do in those years. And I'm gonna briefly run through some of the stuff that I've done since I've been engaged. If we just look in the last couple of years, I've worked to elect, the second I graduated from college, I came back to help elect Wendy Ullman, Steve Sanacero, and Tom Wolf to become our governor. And this year, if we want to elect Josh Shapiro to protect all those rights that we've already mentioned tonight and the ones that we're going to discuss today, we must be able to strategize, mobilize, and engage a new generation of voters and a new generation of leaders that I plan to speak for. If we just look at 2021, because we can all talk a lot about how much we've done, but if we just look at 2021, under my leadership as chair of the Doylestown Democrats, we helped provide $10,000 to local campaigns, whether that be for school board, borough council, or mayor. And that excluded my own campaign where I ran for tax collector. I ran for tax collector in 2021, not because that's exactly my dream job, but that's because somebody needed to do it, because our tax collector stepped back due to personal reasons after the primary had happened. And I faced a hurdle immediately. I ruptured my Achilles tendon. I couldn't walk for 7 weeks. I had to be in a wheelchair. And I had somebody who's in this room dedicated enough and believed in me enough to push me door to door in a wheelchair so that we can talk to the voters. Because it wasn't just about me winning, I knew that. It was about electing Tabitha Delangelo to the school board. It was about holding the countywide seats. Because it's broader than one candidate, and that's the same thing with this race. So if we look at the outcome, yes, I may have came up short, but I lost by 86 votes in 2021, and we increased voter turnout in Doylestown Township by 14% compared to the rest of the county. Democratic voter turnout. I'll tell you this, when 17-year-olds reach out to me and say that they want to vote for the first time, they want to register because of me, I got a message today just about that. That means the world to me. When a parent is looking for somebody to guide them through helping their child that may be transgender, and they are looking for help to connect to the community, they know that they can come to me. And the local business that is struggling, they know that when I'm elected in Harrisburg, that they're going to have a fighter in me. So I'm looking forward to discussing more of the issues tonight, and thank you very much yet again.
Thank you, Connor. And finally, Liz Sheehan.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Liz Sheehan, second term school board director in New Hope, Silbury, mom of 2 kids, and a 10-year resident of Silbury Township. Oh, thank you. I wanted to thank the Assembly District Chairs again, Susan, Phil, and Steve for bringing us here tonight, and to the Doylestown Borough for lending us this lovely space, and to the committee people here and at home for all the work you're doing on this election. I'm running for state rep because going on my 5th year in public service, I am distraught at the lack of trust in our government and the polarized state of our communities. We need leaders who can bring people together to inspire our neighbors, make our communities stronger and more vibrant places to live. That's a tall order, but I'm stepping up to do just that. I'm old enough to remember the 1980 presidential election, Carter versus Reagan. I was in 1st grade. My elementary school staged a mock election. The entire school came together to debate the candidates. We read through our issues of Time for Kids. It came time to fill out our ballots, and I cast my vote for John Anderson. He had 6% of the vote as the independent candidate, and I felt sorry for him. So that's you never know what's going to motivate a voter. But my point of that story is that the entire school talked about the issues and values that were important to us and the process of electing our president. It was a really important time and a really special early memory in school. But fast forward to 2016, I was a Girl Scout troop leader in New Hope. I had a group of 5th grade girls, and this was right before the Trump and Clinton election in November. And I could not talk to them about how important it was to have a woman at the top of the ticket because our community was so fraught, everything was so tense. We couldn't stop to think about how that would be so inspiring to these girls. And it was such a missed opportunity to not have that conversation at the time. Everyone now is primed for a fight, and this unwillingness to compromise is the source of our legislative dysfunction. We see it on our local school boards, we see it in Harrisburg, It's twisted the respect that I think our communities have for teachers, for healthcare workers who really need our support right now. This is a major reason why I'm running for state representative, to put the civil back in civil servant. In 2017, I ran for school board because I was alarmed by Betsy DeVos and by the talk locally about needing science textbooks that taught both sides of climate change. I wanted to try and insulate our district from those influences, to do more for my community and to keep common sense in governance. Last November, I ran for re-election and I held off 4 Republican challengers who outspent myself and my colleagues 3-1. I served as board president in 2020 and 2021, 2 of the most tumultuous years in public education. But through calm and respectful leadership, I kept the district moving forward, despite protests over LGBTQ books, debates over COVID, misplaced debates over critical race theory. I listened to expert guidance and helped pass a mask policy that kept our schools open and our students safe. I'm an ear and a liaison for our community. I'm someone who parents call when they have a concern and an issue. I make connections, I find solutions, and I show up. That's constituent service. And we're making progress. We founded an equity committee in 2020, right after the murder of George Floyd. We had a petition from students, from alumni, people all over the district who asked us to do more to work against bias and discrimination in the district, to look at our curriculum for gaps in content and representation. And I aspire to be an ally in our community, working for social justice. I talk a lot about school board because it's a lens onto the whole complex network of issues that a community faces. It's mental health, it's services for growing numbers of immigrant families, nutrition, workforce development, taxes, of course, the environmental impact of our campus. All of that is within our purview. I have 2 daughters, and I'm frankly terrified at what losing this governor's seat might mean for women's rights. The current threat to Roe v. Wade underscores how critical it is to have more pro-choice women in the State House. Protecting reproductive rights and affordable health care are 2 top priorities for me. Progressive politics is about representation, and more Democratic women in government means more policies like child care support for working families. We need fair wage jobs, reasonable housing costs that attract next generation homebuyers, taxes that don't squeeze out seniors. The Fair Funding Act is critical, but it won't bring that much money into the 29th district. For that, we need to reform charter school tuition and put more general funding into the education budget to relieve our taxpayer burden. We need to maintain our voting rights, and it looks like my time is up, so I look forward to talking more with you about the issues this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Moving on to the question and answer part of the evening. I will read the question and then I'm going to start with a rotating list for who answers first. Question number 1 is, in a Republican-controlled state house, having progressive values is not enough to get legislation passed. In order to succeed, legislators must be able to convince both Republicans and conservative Democrats to support their legislation. Please provide a concrete example of how you have built support among those who disagree with you on a policy or issue, and how you will do so in the State House, especially as a freshman with relatively little influence. Tim, we're going to start with you, and if I may ask that the microphone be passed out.
Thank you. So, I feel that one of my best assets is the diverse background that I have. Like I said, I grew up waiting tables in the coal region, in the middle of nowhere. I was surrounded by, I was a progressive young person who was concerned about racial justice in the middle of the coal region. I had, family that spent, all of their time, out in nature, and we were in the middle of nowhere. So I had so many contacts and relationships with Republican people, Republican officials. I was involved in government at an early age. So I've managed to speak the language. And I see something in that of what we're missing here as Democrats, and something we've missed in our last elections. We aren't talking to working people. We're not talking to the middle class. We've run these elections that are primarily about turnout and that sort of hit hot button issues, but we don't talk about economic issues. So I speak that language. My dad was a hunter. It was the life that I had. So I have concrete examples. I've been in their constituencies in terms of environmental issues. I've seen what happens in an area where industry destroyed all of the environmental resources, and I can talk to those constituencies. So I feel like I have a good opportunity to do that. I feel like I can get things done. Some of the issues that I care about, one of them is animal law, and I feel like one of the proposals that I have can really win over anyone. Oftentimes pet owners, companion animals, don't have a fair justice in our legal system because animals are treated like property. Even Tennessee has a statute that provides some economic treatment that honors the special relationship between an animal and a pet. That's something I could sell to Republicans. There are many things I can sell to Republicans. So I feel like I have a chance to do that. I feel like I can be effective.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on to Neil Doherty.
Hi. I have several concrete examples. They relate to the New Hope Soulbury School Board. In the first 2 years I was on the board, we approved a campus revitalization project. It was $28 million. It was much needed. It was going to bring the campus up to date. It was going to make some ADA compliance changes so that it was, it was ADA compliant. There were 4 folks who ran against incumbents against that project. They got into office and they wanted a redo of that vote. And I was able, one of the incumbents, I was able to flip their vote. This was a sharply divided board, 5 Republicans to 4 Democrats. And when we voted on that the second time, and I was able to reach across to another board member and get them to see the sense and the necessity of that project and to get them to switch their vote, that is a concrete example. And that project proceeded. I can give you a second example on school board, a divided school board 5-4. When we proposed the policy protecting gay and transgender students and staff, it was controversial. I wanted to make sure we got it exactly right. I worked with the superintendent, the solicitor, and I called on an outside counsel to give us feedback to know that the policy was tight. And on that occasion, there was one person who said she simply couldn't vote for it. I encouraged her to abstain. And we got that passed. And that became policy for New Hope Soulbury School District. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. Connor O'Hanlon.
Thank you. So I have 3 different examples that we could talk about here, and they're in different stages of what I've done, what I am doing, and what I'm going to do. So the first one would be what we've done. The easiest thing to sell is, in this case, would be what we've done by electing a strong progressive Democrat to the Central Bucks School Board in Tabitha Delangelo. I know this because she had the largest voter gap in winning, voter margin, out of any Democrat across the entire county. That didn't just come from Democrats, that came from people like me going knocking on doors of independents and Republicans as well. And frankly, my brother who's here tonight, he plays on the Central Bucks West football team. I would go to the games and I would just talk to people at the bar and I would talk to Republicans and independents and say, you know what, I know you think this, you hear this on the news or whatnot, but you should really get to know this person. You should really look into what they're doing and what they're talking about and these issues that really matter to you and your children. The second thing I would talk about, and this is what I'm currently working on, is there's a local musician, his name's Anthony Green. Some of you may know him, he performs all the time, he's in a very big band that tours around the world. He is a recovering addict, and we talk about the opioid crisis here, and I've been working with him and he works with Prevention Philadelphia, so in conjunction we've been working on new and effective ways of providing Narcan to people, and specifically in businesses in town, so that they can help prevent overdoses. And the last one is what I want to do, and that is supporting something like Senator Sanacero's bill that would help create housing for young people and lower income people in the district and specifically across the Commonwealth, by helping alleviate student loan debts to help provide for a down payment for housing. So that's a bipartisan way to sell that, and something that we can achieve progressive causes and create opportunities for young people.
Thank you, Connor. Liz Sheehan, if you could point the mic towards you. Thank you.
Very much. I think this, at its heart, is a question about character. And similar to what Neil described, as a school board director, you are in a nonpartisan position. Once you're in that room, you are serving the entire community. You're not serving Democrats only as a Democrat or Republicans only as a Republican. Both of my elections, I cross-filed, which as a school board director, you are able to do, because I took really seriously the responsibility to serve the entire community. So when we're out canvassing, we're talking to voters of all parties, because we need to know what their opinions are, their issues are, and what questions they have. We're serving everyone, not just parents, of course, not just students, but the entire community. So we had to really build support and build relationships with all voters. When I first joined the board, when I was first elected, we had a Democratic minority. But again, once we were in the room, our parties did not matter. And I don't ascribe, certain values or behaviors to one party or the other. I know we're not, monolithic in that way. We really have to connect on the issues, talk about them in detail, and come to agreement for the bettering of the entire district. And that's what I would do as state representative. I'm not running to only represent Democrats, right? We're representing the entire 29th. We really need to talk to one another. I see this as relationship building. It's, again, a way to bridge gaps, to make connections, and I think that's the best way to think through how we'd approach constituent service.
Thank you, Liz. Moving on to question number 2. A successful run for State House in this district will likely require getting out the Democrat vote, as well as independent and moderate Republican support. How do you intend to garner enough votes to win in the general election? And we'll begin with Neil Dockery.
My understanding is in this district there are around 1,100 independent votes. Certainly they lean Democrat, or they lean blue in Bucks County. I have a record on the school board. I have a record as the county controller working with both parties. When I was on the New Hope-Silbury School Board, it was a 5-4 board, 5 Republicans to 4 Democrats. I had broad support throughout the district. When I arrived at the county courthouse as the Bucks County Controller, I had to work with 2 Republican commissioners, and I got stuff done. Uniformly, I was supported in the courthouse because of how I worked across party lines. As far as getting out the vote in the 29th district, I already have the campaign team in place to do it. I know how to run a local election, and I've run a county election. I haven't run it, I've succeeded in the county election. And I know how to run an election of this size in the 29th. I know how to get on doors, I know how to fundraise, I know how to motivate Democrats and get them out to vote. I also know how to obviously appeal to independents because I believe they appreciate our message. And I think that I would make a clear case to Republicans that I'm not a reasonable character, and I'm not a polarizing figure because I'm a good listener. I may not agree with them, they may not agree with me, but with me they certainly know that they're going to be heard. And I think they appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, Neil. Connor O'Hanlon.
So I think fundamentally the way that we turn people out is, as we all know, knocking those doors. Everybody in here has probably knocked on hundreds, if not thousands of doors, probably throughout your time engaged, as committee people or as volunteers. So just looking at the time that I've been engaged, we can go back to 2020. I know that we were able to turn out an unprecedented level of people for Wendy Ullman's campaign compared to other state representative campaigns, because I was going door to door at 4 hours a day, every single day, to help get Wendy Ullman elected in the 143rd. Now, that was a gerrymandered district, so the result we didn't get the result we wanted, but Wendy Ullman got the most votes out of any campaign ever, except Shelby Labs, who beat her just that year. So I know that that's how we're going to do it. But we also need to look at who we're going to mobilize. We need to engage new voters and bring old voters back into the fold. So the new voters would be, like I hinted at in my introduction, young voters. When we are engaging with young people, we need to do more than pay lip service. We need to provide material benefits, and we need to speak to the issues that matter to them. And when we talk to independents, we need to talk to them about issues that matter to them, not just, blanket cookie cutter things, what we might see on TV, but saying, hey, what matters to you? Do you think that you should have a right to retire? I do too. Do you think that everyone should have access to healthcare? I do too. So these are real issues. These are bread and butter democratic issues, and we need to be able to talk to the voters. And the only way, the best way to turn people out is getting out to the doors. And I've knocked thousands of doors since I've started, and I plan to knock thousands more. So thank you.
Thank you, Connor. Lucian?
Thank you. I think it's, really echo what my fellow panelists here have said. It is about connecting with voters. It's about building relationships. I think there's, I mentioned this in my intro, figuring out what motivates people to get to the polls. And that's a one-on-one kind of conversation. Again, I think there's, depending on who you ask, they will tell you, XYZ, these top 3 things is what's bringing out people this election cycle. But that's a moving target. And I think we need to do, our research, but we also need to connect with people on an individual level. I'm not entirely sure that our voting public understands how dire our situation is right now with voting rights. And I ran out of time to talk about that at the end there, but I think that if we can really explain and have these deep conversations with people just about how fraught our situation is right now with the governor's seat opening up with so much on the table right now, I think that will galvanize people and get them to the polls this year. So it's really about outreach. It's about finding people where they are. It's about talking to young people. It's about getting into schools, and then just mobilizing our neighbors. I spent a lot of time with the Democrats in my local community, working for other candidates. I think I was tied for first in door knocking last election cycle. So I know how to talk to people, and I do know families where they are. People are busy, but we need to reach them when we can. So I think that's the key to getting out the vote is building those relationships and finding people where they are. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. You pass the microphone down. No.
Thank you. So I've talked about this over and over again, and it's one of the reasons that I'm running. I saw the elections that we run over the last couple of years. I saw the election that Hillary Clinton ran, and it was a coastal election. We sort of stopped communicating with those voters that had always made a traditional Democratic majority, and I think we always have to stand for principle. We always have to stand for equality. But we could work on the semantics of how we talk to people. One of the first phone calls that I made was to HRC, and I talked about my core beliefs in equality is really why I'm a Democrat. But I said, sometimes when we use that language, or when we don't choose our language carefully, we're losing some of that old traditional base. So, one of the things that I changed in how I was talking to people is instead of talking about equality, I talked about justice, because that's really what it is. You shouldn't not be able to get an apartment because of the color of your skin or because of because of who you love. So I think we have to work on our semantics, and I think we have to tell people what we're going to do for them and not just what we want for them. And that means talking about economics, talking about how we can do things and improve the lives of their family. Now, Donald Trump used those anxieties of the middle class voter over and over and over again, and we didn't adopt our playbook, and he played on those insecurities. We have to make the case to those people that it's not an us versus them situation. We have to make the case to them as progressives that universal health care, that improved education for their kids, and that these things are going to improve their lives as well. And we have to do it now, because if we don't do that now, we might have another fascist, leader just like Trump over again, and he might not be as incompetent as Trump was. So we need to do that now. We have a responsibility as progressives to talk to those people that are going to make our majority, and we can't keep talking around them. And I'm afraid that's what we did. I think we did it in the last election by not talking to Republicans and independents. I will not make that mistake. I'm going to run a modern progressive campaign. I've already raised nearly $100,000, and I've just brought on staff. So,
Question number 3. This election may cost over $750,000. Please describe how you plan to raise this amount and how you plan to spend it. And for this question, we will begin with Connor O'Hanlon.
Thank you. So the way that we're going to raise the money in this election is going to be the way that we're going to do it moving forward. So if you guys probably all get the text messages from Nancy Pelosi or from Joe Biden or from all these big leaders across the country, but the way that they do this is $5, $10, $15, $20 at a time. The old way of just getting a big fat check, that's not going to fly anymore. We need to engage grassroots people that can donate $20, $25 at a time, and that's the way that my campaign is doing it. We are inching and inching and inching closer to big milestones each day, because every time that we put out a message, it resonates with somebody, whether it be from people across the state, people across the country, or just people right here in Doylestown. That's how we have to do it, because not everyone can write a $100,000 check. 5, 10, 15 at a time. That's how we do it. So now, when we're going to spend the money, the way that my campaign is going to spend the money is by paying for our qualified staff, getting the best people that we possibly can to organize and mobilize, and specifically for me, it's increasing that canvassing effort. So let's just say we couldn't get as many doors as we needed to. We're going to get paid canvassers to help us out there. We're going to get those digital ads that that's actually what the future of the party is: digital ads, not necessarily TV. There's a mixture of all that stuff as well. But we are going to spend every single dollar, not leave anything in the bank, reaching out to voters. That is how we have to do it. The same way that canvassing works, the digital and targeted ads, that's how we're going to go about it as well.
Thank you, Connor. Ms. Sheehan?
Thank you. That's a scary number when you put it out there. And the cynical side of me says, oh, God, think about what we could be spending that money on. This one race in this one area in this one state, we could be solving a lot of problems with that money. So when you think about it in that way, again, it is, as Connor just alluded to, it's chipping away at it a little bit at a time. But again, it goes back to sort of what's going to make someone decide to support you. How can you connect with them and let them know that you have their interests in mind, that you share values that will bring people to the polls. I think, as the only woman in this race, I will have resources available to me through organizations like Emily's List. There's, Represent PA. There's a lot of organizations that are looking to increase the number of women in government. Progressive politics is, in part about representation. We need more women in office. And again, it's making connections in the community. It's going to meet and greets. It's, thinking through, again, what people are going to connect with. I think, in terms of looking at finding voters where they are, whether it's through social media, whether it's texting, whether it's, just old-fashioned door knocking again, and building up, what we can, and spending it wisely, because it is a lot of money. It represents an investment in the community, and that means a lot.
Thank you, Liz. Moving on to Tim. You can pass the mic down. Thank you.
So at this stage of the campaign, I have primarily focused on talking to committee people. I think that's what's important at this stage. I think we need to show you that we have the capacity to win an election, and that we have the resources to win an election, and that we have the talent to win an election. So my number one priority right now has been talking to committee people. But I think the way you raise money is the same way that I always had. I mean, what you do is you have relationships. I've built a statewide network. I've run a statewide organization. I've worked with unions. I've worked with Democratic interest groups. And you know, when I took over the Pennsylvania Young Democrats, the year before they had raised a total of $250, all of which I donated. We had about $18,000 or $20,000 in debt, and I'm just out of law school, possibly. I don't remember, it was 2008, 2009. But we took on that responsibility. We filed a bunch of old finance reports that the last administration didn't do, and then we got a fundraiser, and we raised $40,000, nearly $40,000 in 2 years, and that was for an interest group. So I've spent a little bit of time doing fundraising. It's been exceptionally productive so far. I have relationships. I have the ability to do that. The first person to donate to my campaign was the treasurer of the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania. I've worked with people across the state. So I don't think I'll have much difficulty doing the fundraising. I can't actually wait to do the fundraising. I'm one of those weird people that actually enjoy making phone calls and asking friends and family for money, and strangers even. I have hundreds and hundreds of lists that I just don't know what to do with, from years in PA-29 and years as an attorney. I've used my professional contacts. I've hit up the other people on the other side of me on cases. I'll use my experts, but you know what? I'm going to do every single possible thing that I can do to raise the money to win this race, and I'm going all out. So trust me, we'll be fine.
Thank you, Tim. And Neil Dockley.
Hi. Thanks. I understand how this election could cost so much, and part of that is because this district is so important. Obviously, we in the 29th want to win this. Well, we have a duty to the Democrats throughout Pennsylvania to win this district because there are only so many flippable seats. This is one of them. This is top 10, possibly top 8. So when you say 750,000, that's accurate. On day one, my wife and I have made a personal commitment of 250,000 because we know it's necessary. If you look at the last cycle with Bucks United, I had a target. I raised 3 times that amount. We were expected to raise 50. I collected 150,000 from individual donors. These were contributions anywhere from $46, which was actually one of my favorite. I was like, why 46? Joe Biden. To $2,500. These were all individual donors. And this was done through call time. Call time isn't necessarily fun, but it's necessary. You've got to do it methodically. You've got to work through the list, and you've got to appeal to voters that you care about the issues that they care about. They're willing to contribute to your campaign. The first person I brought on was a campaign manager. I already have a fundraising staff in place. I have someone for digital, and most importantly, there's the most important guy right there, my campaign manager, but I have the lit person who is also doing the literature for Josh Shapiro's campaign, because you have to be able to coordinate up ticket. This will be paid for canvassing, or this will pay for canvassing, it'll pay for literature, it'll pay for digital. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Moving on to question number 4. What legislation would you support to address the opioid crisis and overdose deaths in Pennsylvania? And for this question, we'll begin with Liz Sheehan.
Thank you so much. So far, I've spent time with people who have been affected by the opioid crisis, parents who have lost kids. It's touched so many families. I think it's time to treat addiction as a disease, to decriminalize the process of finding people help for their addiction. There's a lot happening right now. Part of what I need to do as a candidate and will do as a state representative is to continue to research and talk to people about what they need, what their experiences have been. My family, like so many other families, has been touched by addiction. We're in a crisis right now, and we need to think through how we meet the needs of everyone that are affected by it. So it's an ongoing issue and one that I'm looking forward to digging into and understanding better. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz.
At this point, I think we all know that the opioid crisis is also a fentanyl crisis. And I think the number one thing we have to do is remember the humanity behind all this, and that there are people involved. And we all know someone who's affected. Every single one, I would imagine every single person in this room knows someone who's been affected by the opioid crisis. And what we have to do is we have to address the root causes. We have to address the addiction. We have to provide treatment. It's so difficult to move away from this addiction without medical assisted treatment. We have to marshal resources. We have to have a community response to the opioid epidemic. It has to involve law enforcement. It has to involve healthcare. It has to involve Department of Corrections. It has to involve the courts. It has to involve the government. We have to break the stigma that's tied to having an addiction, and we have to work with people to bring them back into the communities and provide job support to bring back some normalcy. We have to educate the public. As a council person here in Doylestown, one of the things we focused on is making sure that our officers had Narcan. We've had drop boxes for medications. Those are simple steps you can make. There's a million other steps we could take. But I think we have to remember the humanity in this, and it has to be something that, and this is actually one of those chances that we have to work with Republicans. So I do hope we take those steps and help the people that are suffering from this.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on to Neil Doherty.
So this is an issue that has been important to me for a while. I had a keen interest in when I ran for state rep back in 2016. I have a friend who's a doctor, and he informed me it was coming through his office. We have seen this move from oxy to heroin to fentanyl. And during the pandemic, the situation has even worsened. Fentanyl is so addictive, it is so lethal, and it takes so much longer to detox from. While I was serving as Bucks County Controller, I sat on the prison board. Last fall, a typical month, we had 300 intakes in the prison. 181 of them required a hard detox. The number jumped off the page. It was astonishing. The good news is there's been a settlement for $1 billion, which is going to provide funding for care. I believe Bucks County's portion of it is around $18 million. Josh Shapiro, in all likelihood, as the Attorney General, is going to be overseeing that, as he will as our next governor. We're losing young people. We need to increase access to treatment. We need to increase access and mental health support, and we need to increase medication-assisted treatment. And what I mean by that is there are caps on physicians and how many people they can treat who are in recovery. And there's two pathways. Usually they use Suboxone or they use Vivitrol. And once you're on those, you are considered in recovery. We need a stronger effort. I want to put this in perspective. Gun violence is a problem throughout our nation. Anywhere from 35 to 38,000 people are killed by gun violence each year. Last year, more than 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. More than 5,000 people in Pennsylvania alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
So when it comes to the opioid crisis, I know this all too well, like I said in my one of my previous answers, working with my friend Anthony. Also, a former teammate of mine, also from Central Bucks West when I played football, he died from a heroin overdose. And these things don't just happen overnight. These things are developed over time. So there's a few things that we can do. The first thing would be, of course, getting Narcan in the hands of more people. So we already have, thanks to the commissioners, we already do have some programs that do help get Narcan out into the police's hands. But I think when I'm elected to be your state representative, to help provide funding to municipalities, to actually provide it to businesses. Because a drug overdose that happens, if it takes 5 minutes for the police to get there, it might be too late. and providing funding for trainings for average citizens as well to identify and be able to identify overdoses, because a lot of people you just catch overdosing in a car, like my friend Anthony has done, and he had Narcan on him, so he has saved somebody's life because of that. But if they had to wait for somebody to respond, it would have been too late. So being able to fund trainings to have average citizens learn to identify and use Narcan is also important. The decriminalization of drugs, putting people behind bars has never been the answer for drug use, whether it be addiction from any number of drugs, and funding healthcare. Funding healthcare, whether it be just bread and butter healthcare and making sure that everybody has healthcare in this state and across the country, and access to mental health services. And then the last thing would be to address inequalities. So whether it be the inequality of access to healthcare or the inequality of just wealth inequality, because if that is what might lead someone to using drugs. So thank you.
Thank you, Connor. Moving on to question number 5. In response to federal military bases contaminating local water supplies with harmful chemicals called PFAS, Pennsylvania state representatives in Bucks and Montgomery counties and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection recently proposed PFAS regulations for Pennsylvania water utilities. The proposed remediation requires significant investments from local municipalities' authorities, which will get passed on to residents. How would you approach balancing cost and risk in regulating these chemicals, as well as make sure the Commonwealth assists the municipal water authorities financially so residents don't have to?
Yeah. There's an environmental question underneath all of this, but starting with the PFAS. We've already started to prepare for that in Doylestown. About 2 years ago, we started building a water capital fund. We have a sale that's coming that's probably going to generate $1.2 million. We know that we're going to have issues with PFAS. We don't know yet how much it's going to affect us, but for municipalities that could mean a well coming offline, and it could be millions of dollars for local municipalities. So we're going to need to talk to our state representatives. We're going to need to work with our state representatives. State representatives are going to have to reach out to local communities to deal with this, because this deals with the quality of our water and the purity of our water. So we have to be prepared for this. Municipalities are going to have to start in advance for this. But in the borough of Doylestown, we have already started our preparation. So it is an issue, and it is a matter of concern that we're addressing here in Doylestown, and it's certainly something that legislators are going to have to discern best to fund. But we're certainly going to need some state aid.
Thank you, Tim. Neil Doherty.
Hi. So this is a pertinent issue locally. My understanding is that over at the Crosskeys intersection, they have already found traces of PFOAs. They don't know the source of it, but I think if you look back to the 2012 fire over there at the Arbanite facility, I mean, obviously that could be a source. This is a serious challenge. And part of the reason it's a challenge is PFOAs are referred to as forever chemicals. There is very little that can be done with respect to remediation. For those folks that are on wells, they're going to have to move them to public water. That's an incredible infrastructure expense. It's going to be a serious challenge, but it's something that we're going to have to work on. The state is going to have to assist the county, but eventually we're going to have to look at the manufacturers who produce those chemicals and those fire suppressant materials that had the chemicals in them.
Thank you, Neil. Connor O'Hanlon.
Thank you. I'll echo what Neil just said on some of the stuff with the firefighting chemicals, but I also want to talk about the Commonwealth should be funding, absolutely should be helping fund for any sort of remediation that we can do, and providing to support people's health. I mean, that's one of the basic functions of our government should be helping make sure that we have healthy citizens. One of my main pillars of my campaign is investing in infrastructure in a sustainable and efficient way. So whether that be helping with hooking up to public water or sewer, or it be just investing in new piping, because PFAS is not the only issue we would see in our water. But also, I will highlight that there is a big push across not just Pennsylvania, but a lot past in the country to privatize water supplies. And I am somebody that is a proud advocate for public water supplies, and I know that there's activists from, it's called NOPE, but it started in Doylestown, and they have been fighting against the privatization of the water, because if the water ends up getting privatized, costs are going to go up. So even if we were to remediate any problems, then we would have higher water prices. And that's not something that I think that we should have. I think water is the most common, or the most basic thing that we all need, so it should be a common good. So however we can provide it to people at the lowest cost, the most clean and efficient way we could possibly do it, I support.
Thank you, Connor. And Liz Sheehan.
Thank you. I think when you're asking to evaluate this cost versus risk analysis, I feel like there is no cost that's too high for clean water. We have to figure out how to work together, municipalities, states, county, whatever it takes to make sure that our citizens have clean water. It's a basic right. Looking at, as Neil mentioned, the manufacture of these chemicals to help with this, not the remediation, but the cost of making sure that people have access to clean water, to educate our community about the dangers of these chemicals. We have seen this, of course, on a national scale. We look, everyone knows what happened in Flint, Michigan. There's again, we're thinking about distrusting government. When a locality fails to keep their citizens safe, when they fall back in dealing with an issue that's right in front of them, when they ignore it or minimize the actual risk to citizens, that's how this mistrust in government starts. It's how we need to make sure that we take care of our citizens. We need to make sure that people can understand and trust in their government that's going to do the right thing for them when manufacturer creates this risk in our community. So again, it's thinking about the cost versus risk. There is there's no cost that's too high to make sure that our citizens are safe.
Thank you, Liz. Moving on to question number 6. How would you convey to the electorate the threat of Republican ballot initiatives that would take away the ability of Pennsylvania voters to elect Supreme Court justices? For this question, we'll begin with Neil Gowdy.
So what they want to do is zone the election of Supreme Court justices. That's my understanding. That would that would dilute our votes here in Southeast Pennsylvania. They would be diminishing our votes. That would apply to Republicans and Democrats alike. That is gerrymandering at its worst. That is what they're working to do here. There's no distinction between gerrymandering a district for a state representative or a state senator, as what they're trying to do here is gerrymander judicial races. This absolutely, we have to reach the electorate on this one, because my understanding is they want to put this out as a referendum. And I think people need to understand the consequences of this vote. Unfortunately, referendums have a pretty good record of passing in Pennsylvania. We are going to need an all-out assault. We're going to need to communicate to the voters so they understand the consequences of this. This would be diluting their votes here and putting it elsewhere in the state to serve Republican interests. I don't think people want fairness. They want fairness. In the 29th, it is a moderate district from New Hope to New Britain. I think Democrats, Republicans, and Independents would all agree that judges, the way they're currently elected, is reasonable and fair and equitable. When they want to start zoning the judicial districts, they would be taking away the strength of our votes here. And I think that would resonate with Republicans and Democrats alike.
Thank you, Neil. Connor O'Hanlon.
Thank you. Obviously, as Neil said, this is blatant gerrymandering. This is a way that the Republicans can just pick and choose how they like, draw the maps, and just get their way. This is nothing new when it comes to the PA GOP, and that's why we need someone that's going to stand up and fight against them tooth and nail. A lot of what we are talking about tonight, as we've all, come to recognize, is not going to be possible if we don't flip the state house and we don't flip the state senate and we don't get Josh Shapiro elected. So we need to make sure that we're engaging voters in the primary election, because that's when they're probably going to try to throw this on the ballot. So how do we do that? Full circle. It goes back to one of the first questions that we were asked. It's how do you mobilize people to get out and vote? Well, you tell them. The PA GOP is attacking our the most sacred foundational right that we have in this country, and that's the right to vote. Everybody in this room believes that everybody should be able to vote. Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, we all think that. We do. Not everyone thinks that way. So this is just one piece of course, the broader narrative that they are trying to sow, that mail-in ballots are fraudulent, or that drop boxes are fraudulent. It's all part of the same scheme to say that democracy is bad. I believe that democracy is good, and I don't think that we should be having the Pennsylvania Republican Party pick and choose their candidates and the voters in their districts so that they can get the people that they want. I think that we, the people, should elect people across the state the way that we've always done it for statewide elections for judges.
Thank you, Connor. Ms. Sheehan?
Thank you. So the House Democratic Campaign Committee, one of the reasons why this race is projected to be so expensive is because of this issue. Because they know that that is, again, a referendum likely to pass if people aren't paying attention, if we don't get enough people out to vote, if they're not informed about the importance of this issue, then it's really an assault on our democracy. We've talked about that a lot tonight. I think there is, again, an uneven understanding in the voting public about how important this is and what it really means to their right to vote. So it's going to be incredibly important that we get information out into the public, that we mobilize people on this issue, and that they understand the importance of what the judicial vote means and why they need to be involved.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah, so this is one of the main reasons I'm running, some of these attacks on our democracy. The 21st century has seen so many challenges to democratic principles, both here and abroad. We have so many state representative elected officials who raise their right hand to protect our Constitution and then turn around and go into Harrisburg and pass bills or attempt to pass bills like House Bill 1800 last year that make it harder to vote, that make it harder for election boards to count our votes. I was there in 2020 with a local election board, them trying to get the vote done as quickly as possible. And Republicans in Harrisburg are trying to literally make that harder. They're trying to make it harder to vote. So no one in this race has more experience, with protecting our democratic processes. I've been doing it for 20 years as an election protection attorney. I studied European democracies. I was certified in law and government here. I worked on redistricting reform, and that's it's shocking to me that you would interject the political process into judicial elections. It interferes with separation of powers, and it's shocking in its audacity. These amendments are designed to pass. We've had since 1968. Only 6 of 49 of these amendments actually failed. The Republican legislature thinks that they can put their thumb on elections over and over and over again. And this is just another example of it. They're tinkering with our most important democratic principles for political gain. It is shallow, and it needs to be stopped. You need people to stand up to that. It's been said that a politician thinks of the next election, a statesperson thinks of the next generation. Lord knows we need some people in Harrisburg that are thinking of the next generation, because after they're done burning everything down, I don't know what we're going to have left. And it shouldn't be it shouldn't be a confrontational issue about letting people vote.
Thank you, Tim. Final question of the evening. A contested primary will force the candidates to spend significant resources and could potentially divide the party. Should another candidate obtain an endorsement from the PA-29 Democrats, would you or would you not continue to run in the primary, and what is your reasoning for this choice? For this question, we'll begin with Connor O'Hanlon.
So since I graduated from college, I've spent every day building a grassroots movement, a progressive grassroots movement. And I've been leading the Doylestown Democrats for about 2 years at this point. So everything that I've done, I've made these choices to put the party and the movement first rather than just myself. So if there was somebody else that got an endorsement, I would not continue running. But that being said, I do expect to hopefully earn your support, and if we do have an open primary, I do expect to run through that.
Okay, thank you, Connor. Moving on to Liz Sheehan.
Thank you so much. No, I would not continue to run. I am in this for the issues. I'm in this for my community, and to be, a representative for the 29th. If I were not to gain the endorsement of the committee people, this is the backbone of our party, and I would honor that choice, and I would work to elect the best candidate to beat, whoever we're going to be facing, still an unknown, in the general election. So absolutely, this is an incredibly important race. We have to put our best foot forward. I believe I'm that candidate. Should you not agree, I would absolutely do my best to make sure that we flip the seat, because we know that we need a Democrat. We need to work on building our majority in the State House in order to make sure that we can continue to have our values represented there. Thanks.
Thank you, Liz. Tim Brennan.
So I respect this committee. I respect the committee people and the good work that they do. I understand how important it is to win your endorsement. I am doing everything I can to talk individually with every single committee person. And I've made that effort. I'm trying to get in touch with everyone. I ran an election in 2018. It was heartbreaking. I came up 55 votes short, and in the midst of that, I turned around. I went to the Doylestown Democrats and I told everyone there that they had to that if you care about these issues, if you honestly care about the people who we all represent and who we wish to represent, that you have to support this other person. And we're doing that because we care about the issues, because we care about the people, and frankly, the stakes are too high. It's hard to commit to not running, but I think I've shown by my track record that I'm going to do what's right for the Democratic Party. I've done it my whole life. I'll be heartbroken, but I want to be in this fight. I care about these issues, and when I first started thinking about this, I talked to my son, and I talked about what I do as a lawyer, and I have so many people that depend on me, and that their life could spiral if I'm not there for them. And every single day I'm doing good things for people, and they're championed in an individual setting. But my thoughts and my imagination always takes me to this idea that you could do so much good for 12.5 million people. And I went through all the struggles that my sister went through, being gay, and I saw all the opportunities that were taken from her. I saw her raise 3 wonderful triplets. I saw her finally get married. I can't imagine not being in the fight. So I want to make a difference, but I can tell you as best as I can that I'm going to do what's right for this party, and I'm going to continue to do that whether I'm endorsed, whether I'm not endorsed. Do what's right for the party. I do hope I win your support, but I think I'll do the right thing.
Thank you, Tim. Neil Doggett.
I anticipate running in the primary. I'm working every day to get the endorsement, and I hope I get the endorsement. I respect this committee and the work that they're putting in, but it's a newly formed committee, it's a newly formed district. I also respect the wisdom of the voters. I believe the voters should have a say in this process as well. So I anticipate running in the primary. Thank you.
Thank you all. This concludes the question and answer component of the evening. We'll move on to closing remarks moving in reverse alphabetical order. So Liz Sheehan will begin.
Great. Thank you all so much for your time and attention this evening. The opportunity to choose and endorse one of the 4 fine Irish candidates you have up here. Had to be said. Like these gentlemen, I did not grow up here. I moved here as an adult. My husband works at Doylestown Hospital. We moved here about, 11 years ago to Doylestown Borough and spent a year here while we learned the community. We had moved, I want to say 5 or 6 times the previous decade during his medical training, and we were so thrilled to finally find a home and make roots here in this community. And there were so many reasons why we chose to stay. We've been here a decade now. After the year in Doylestown Borough, we moved out to Salisbury. Our kids are in the school there. We have a high schooler now and a 5th grader. So I have learned this community as an adult, and we chose it because of the people we met, the natural resources here. We spent a ton of time at Audubon. Our kids met their best friends there. I've learned so much from that community as far as reasons why the environment is one of the top issues for voters in this community, because we have such an amazing space that we live in. And we want to take care of it. And so I'd be honored to represent this community to make sure that everything that we found here continues to grow as a community, to build these relationships. I think no matter what happens with this primary, we have an immense amount of talent and passion in this district that I know will carry the Democrats to victory in November. I'm incredibly motivated to be that one to flip this seat. I think that governance is more than a resume. It's vision, it's communication, it's compassion, and it's experience. I'm, like I said, incredibly motivated to work really hard to be the representative, because there's so much at stake in this election. We've talked about reproductive rights, voting rights, the environment, climate change initiatives, lots of other things we didn't even touch on right now. The growing number of immigrant families here, the creative economy that's such a draw for tourists and for people like myself, with backgrounds in the arts that wanted to come here for that reason. There's a lot happening in this district, even though it's new. It's so amazing to see it come together in this way. I want to thank again the organizers for putting this forum together to meet us, to talk with us, to learn about our experiences. And to try and serve the dedicated people across the 29th district. I hope to earn your support. I'm going to point out my PAC chair who's got my information. A little plug, if you need anything over there, sign up for volunteer, grab one of my cards. I'm looking forward to talking with you all again individually. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz. Connor O'Hanlon.
Thank you all again. Thank you for coming. For everybody that's here in person, thanks for watching. If you're watching online, thanks to the organizers and, of course, Doylestown Borough for letting us host this event here. In closing tonight, I wanted to highlight one more time my platform. My platform is called the Pennsylvania New Deal. And the reason why I call it that is very important to me. I call it that because the greatest domestic achievements that we have ever had in this country have been democratic platforms. From the New Deal to the Great Society, Democrats have consistently made progressive change possible by working for the people. I want to use my platform to build a strong economy here in Bucks County. I want to create an infrastructure that is sustainable and efficient, that will allow future generations to inherit this planet. And I want to protect the rights of all people here in Pennsylvania. We have an opportunity to put the working class people of this district in the driver's seat. Here in Pennsylvania 29th, we have an opportunity to elect someone who will invest in our municipalities from Chalfont to New Hope. We have an opportunity to elect somebody that will fight for Main Street and not special interest groups. And we have the opportunity to elect someone that believes that regardless of your religion, your race, or your gender, that you should be able to achieve the most foundational belief of this country, achieving the American dream. So it starts right here in this room. you all have the opportunity to help choose the next candidate to help elect, or to help flip this seat blue in 2022. I really want to thank you one more time for coming out tonight and engaging in this debate between us all, and I want to thank my colleagues for doing the same. And you can learn more about me and my campaign at ConnorO'Hanlon.com. You can go check that out right now, and you want to learn more about the Pennsylvania New Deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connor. Neil Doherty.
I want to thank the chair and the two vice chairs for staging this event. I want to thank the committee folks who are here and those at home. But I also want to thank these three. Ultimately, we're on the same team, and that's most important. Earlier this evening, I shared with you my experience, my reason for running, and where I stand on important legislative issues like education, the opioid crisis, reproductive rights, climate change, and protecting our elections. I want to share some facts with you. I'm the one candidate who has already won the outline of the 29th. I won it in November, 54-46, despite the red wave. And with all due respect to my colleagues up here, if you look closely at the results in New Hope Solebury, and if you look closely at the results in Doylestown Township, in both occasions, I collected more votes. I won New Hope Solebury, and I won Doylestown Township. Having been an elected official at the local level as a school director, and having been a countywide official, I know how a state rep can best work with school districts, with municipal officials, and with county officials. I have a robust record of fundraising. I have a campaign in place to win this election. But I want to bring something else to your attention, and I think this is important. When I was on the New Hope Solebury School Board, there were 5 Republicans and 4 Democrats. It was a sharply divided board, and I found a way to get things done. When I was elected county controller and I arrived at the courthouse, I had to contend with 2 Republican commissioners, and I found a way to get things done. Currently, if you look at the composition of the New Hope Solebury School Board, and if you look at the composition of the Doylestown Borough Council, uniformly, it's Democrats. That's a testament to the party, but in no way is that reflective of the environment in Harrisburg, where every committee is sharply divided, where every vote is closely contested. I have a record of succeeding in that kind of environment. I started by saying, I'm experienced, I'm principled, I'm rooted in this district, and I'm ready to serve you in Harrisburg. I'm asking for your support. I will give it everything I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Tim Brennan.
Thank you all. I also want to thank all the candidates up here. We have exceptional candidates, and I think we're lucky, and we are building a bench here as Democrats. I am certain that there are so many issues that you didn't get to hear that we all stand for and that we all care about. So I also want to encourage you to look at my website, www.brennanforpa.com. Take a look at some of the things that I care about, some of the things that motivate me, some pretty pictures of me and my family. Do take a look, please. I continue to believe that we can win this general election as the pro-democracy party, pro-woman and family party, pro-justice party. And I also continue to believe that there's a balance in this country between rights and responsibility. I honestly believe that if we want our children to have the same rights that we enjoy today, that we have to take up the responsibility for defending our democracy. You're all doing that here today, making these difficult decisions about who is best to serve this district and who can really make a difference in Harrisburg. For me, I have always sort of the things that motivate me, I've fallen back on a quote from Henry David Thoreau. It was literally the first line on my law school application, and I feel like I've been living by that. Be not merely good, be good for something. I've spent my life in service. I've done the difficult work for communities, for this party, and for the issues that I care about and that we care about. I've been on the front line of those fights that have changed the direction of of social issues, that defended our democracy, and that changed communities. It's not just a resume point. Experience matters. It's what gets things done at the margins. Whether these issues are LGBT issues that I've worked on, protecting our democracy, fighting for working people as an attorney certified in workers' comp, whether it's fighting for a better treatment and a change in how we treat animals. I've been on the front line of those issues. And I will take every lesson that I've learned, every connection that I've made, and every resource that I have to put it to serving the people of this district. And then when I'm elected, it's not just going to be a one-time thing. I'm going to continue to work to build this party because, frankly, that's what I've always done. I mean, you've seen it from me. I have a reliable track record. This is a job that I'll be ready for on day one. I'm not being asked to do this. I'm not treating this like it's an opportunity. I'm not going to be a career politician. I'm not going to treat this as a rung on a ladder. I honestly feel like this is a chance to help my neighbors and to improve my community, just like we did with this building here and with this park next door. I fundamentally believe that government has a role in improving people's lives and that we have a responsibility to make it improve people's lives. It's animated me, it's what I've done my whole life. I also believe that there's nothing wrong with this country that can't be fixed with what's right with this country. I think we all need to believe in the in what that means and the hope and the purpose of that statement. I'm ready to lead on day one. I'll make a difference in Harrisburg. I'm asking for your support to give me a chance to do the things that we all care about. I will be tireless for you and for the people that we all care about. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. That concludes the closing remarks, and that also concludes our event of the evening. I believe Susan, maybe.
All I want to do is say, wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much to Tim and Nino and Connor and Liz. This was fabulous. I know you had to do a lot of work to prepare for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good night, everyone.